All right, so let's get started. So our area of focus. So can we all hear me? Let's confirm that everybody can hear.
Yes,
Can we all hear?
yes, we can hear you and we can see the screen you're
I
projecting.
can hear you and see your screen.
All right, all right, all right. That's good. So our area of focus tonight will be on activity-based cost. ABC, activity-based cost. Now, without wasting much time, let's go into it. So this is performance management. Performance management. And the topic is activity-based cost. So when we talk about activity-based costing, now is one of the new modern costing technique that was introduced, and it has some edge over the traditional absorption costing technique, which is based on absorption costing. So let's look at this. We'll talk about costing. So our focus is going to be on costing techniques. Now, under this costing, we're going to be looking at costing techniques. Now, these costing techniques we'll be looking at, or we'll be breaking it down into two. So, for the purpose of this class, first one we'll be looking at is the traditional costing technique, and second one we'll be looking at is the modern costing technique. Now, the traditional costing technique, which is commonly known as the absorption costing technique, the absorption costing technique. Now, why the modern costing technique? Now, there are several kinds of modern costing technique, but our focus now is on activity-based costing. That's ABC. There are several forms of modern costing technique, but the one we are focusing on is on activity-based costing. Now, what's the importance of? So let's look at the absorption costing technique. Now, the absorption costing technique is a costing technique that charges overhead using the normal level of activity, which we know as labor hours. Now, the absorption costing technique is a costing technique that charges overhead using the normal level of activity, which we know as labor hours. So remember that our cost of production, let me say cost of production, can be calculated as follows. Cost of production and be calculated as follows. Now we have the remember we have your direct materials. You have your direct materials. You have your direct labor. You have your direct expenses. Direct expenses. Now, remember that the sum of direct material, direct labor, and direct expenses will give you what's prime cost. And this is your prime cost. So now then after your prime cost, you have your production overhead. Production overhead. Now, your production overhead, in addition to your prime cost, gives you your production costs. So now, looking at this, under absorption costing technique, production costs or absorption costing technique charges overhead based on what? Labor hours. So labor hours is the only level of activity that we use in charging overhead under the traditional costing technique, which is the absorption costing technique. And remember, under the absorption costing technique, we have three main steps, which is the allocation of overheads. We have the apportionment of overheads, and we have the absorption of overhead. Now, these three main processes are used under the absorption costing technique to allocate or to charge overhead. So allocation of overhead, that has to do with charging overhead to the cost center that directly incurs the overhead. Now, apportionment of overhead. So apportion overhead means that an organization or a department incurs, or more than one department incurs one overhead. For example, rent. Rent as an overhead is incurred for the organization as a whole. So let's assume we have 5 departments within the organization. So if we have 5 departments within the organization, it means that we have to share the rent that has been incurred for the department as a whole. We have to apportion the one that belongs to each department. That's apportionment of overhead. Then absorption of overhead. So absorption of overhead simply means charging overhead as part of your production cost. So to absorb overhead means to charge a portion of overhead that is going to form part of your production cost. And we are saying that in charging the portion of your overhead that will form part of your production cost, using traditional costing technique, we charge it on the basis of labor hours. Remember that under our traditional technique, overhead absorbed is calculated as your overhead absorption rate times the actual level of activity. The actual level of activity. Now, based on the traditional absorption costing technique. So it means that if I have many overheads incurred in that organization, now all those overhead will be incurred on the basis of just a single level of activity, which will cover for the whole overhead that has been incurred for the period. So we are now saying that is not a good system. What we are trying to say is that that absorption costing system does not break down overhead costs for us. It doesn't break down overhead costs. So it means that if we have incurred overhead costs of, let's say, 5 million, now we are looking at the total overhead cost we have incurred. That's what the absorption costing technique is telling us. We are looking at the total overhead cost that has been incurred. We are not looking at the component of cost that makes up that overhead cost to be 5 million. So in charging overhead using the traditional costing technique or the absorption costing technique, the total 5 million, which represents the total amount of overhead that has been incurred, is what will be taken into consideration. Are we together? And another thing about the traditional costing technique is, like I said, it makes use of a single overhead absorption rate, which is your what? Labor hours. The labor hours. So it means that all the overhead we have been incurring or we have incurred for that period, for us to absorb, we absorb based on what? Labor hours, which makes it not looking into each cost that has been what? Incurred. Now, so looking at that, we now look at something that can give a more realistic clarity or a more clarity on the total cost that has been incurred. So imagine that I incur an overhead of, let's say, 5 million. And in that overhead of 5 million I incurred, I have, let's say, rent, I have, let's say, material cost, I have different overhead that has been incurred. I have, let's say, assembly cost, I have, let's say, maintenance cost. Now, what I'm trying to say in essence is that, let's say, rent is 2 million. Let's say material cost is 1.5 million. Let's say, 1.5 million. 1.5 million. Let's say assembly cost is 1 million. 1 million. And let's say maintenance cost is 0.5 million. So if you look at it, everything sums up together to give what? 5 million. So what I'm trying to analyze is that our traditional costing technique or absorption costing technique tells us that when we are calculating for production overhead to be absorbed as part of your production cost, you recognize the whole 5 million as your total overhead. So looking at it, we don't take into consideration each of these individual overhead that has been incurred. We don't look at them one after the other, and we just take the whole 5 million, and the whole 5 million will be absorbed on a single overhead rate, which is your labor hours. That's the single overhead rate, which is your labor hours. So we now brought in a new costing technique that now allows us to look into the overhead costs one by one, which is known as the activity-based costing. So one of the differences between the absorption costing technique and the activity-based costing technique is that absorption costing technique does not break down overhead costs, while activity costing-based costing technique breaks down overhead costs. It breaks down overhead costs into what we call cost pools. Cost pools. It breaks down overhead costs into cost pools. When we talk about a cost pool, a cost pool simply means grouping all similar costs together. A cost pool simply means grouping all similar costs together. And for every cost pool, there's something we call a cost driver. So let me come here and do something like this. Now I'll say 1. I'll say 2. And I'll say 3. So the first one here is what? Cost pool. The next one is what? Cost driver. And the other one is what? Activity. So these 3 terms under activity-based costing, they are very, very important. Cost pool, cost driver, and activity. Now, what is an activity? An activity has to do with what? Okay, let's start with cost pool. We said cost pool has to do with what? Grouping similar costs together. That's a cost pool. Grouping similar costs together. So the first thing is that what there will be a cost pool. So a cost pool has to do with all the similar costs that we have incurred. We group them together. And an example of a cost pool is your material ordering costs. You have your assembly cost. You have your maintenance costs. So that's your cost pool. Now, the next one is your what? Cost driver. Now, your cost driver, those are activities that drives the cost. Activities are what drives the cost. Now, these are terms under activity-based costing that we must understand. Cost pool, that's the grouping of all the similar costs together. Cost driver, these are activities that drives the what? Cost. Then we talk about what? Activity. So when we talk about activity, so activity simply means from the word activities, like all the major activities that what are carried out in an organization. That's area of operations that an organization wants to achieve. So these are the 3 things: area of operation, coordinated to achieve an objective. That's an what? Activity. So a cost driver now. The cost driver. So for every cost pool, there's a cost driver. So we talk about material ordering costs. So the cost driver to material ordering cost will be our number of what? Orders. The cost driver to your assembly cost will be your what? Labor hours. And the cost driver to your maintenance cost will be your what? Machine hours. So for examination purposes, it's very important that we understand our cost pool and our cost driver. It's very, very important that we understand them, because by the time we are going to be calculating for an activity-based costing, what we are going to be looking into majorly, what we'll be interested in is what? Our cost pool. So all the cost pool will be given to us, cost drivers will be given to us. So it's now your responsibility to identify the cost driver to each cost pool. Sometimes examiner can just give you the cost pool and might not attach the cost driver to individual cost pool. So it means that you have to know the cost driver to individual what? Cost pool. Then sometimes examiner can just give you the cost driver attributable to individual cost pool. So let me just put it here so that we can get that cost pool. Cost pool, then cost driver. Please let's confirm that we can understand that we are following. Please let's confirm that we understand we are following. Please let's confirm that.
We are following. We understand what you're saying.
Who else does not understand? Tony, do you understand?
Yes, I do. I get you clearly.
All right. So the next one is inspection costs. Another cost pool is inspection costs. So what will be the cost driver for inspection costs? That will be what? Number of what? Inspections. Another cost pool will be setup costs. Setup cost. So what will be the cost driver for a setup cost? That will be what? Number of what? Setup. Number of setup. Another cost pool could be machine operation cost. Now, what will be the cost driver? That will be what? Machine hours. So for every cost pool, there is a cost driver. So let's take notes. Let's come back. Let's do a recap. We said under the traditional absorption costing technique method, costing or production overhead are absorbed using a single overhead rate and taking into consideration the total overhead that has been incurred for the period. It means that it doesn't give room for overhead cost to be broken down into different words of classification. Then for the traditional absorption overhead costing technique, the main level of activity, our level of activity will be labor hours, except otherwise stated. Except otherwise stated. Our level of activity will be labor hours, except the examiner states otherwise. The examiner doesn't state otherwise. Our level of activity will be based on what? Labor hours. Then we're now saying that there is a technique that helps overhead costs to be broken down. Now, and to understand this activity-based costing technique, you have to understand these three key or these three crucial aspects, which has to do with cost pool, cost driver, and what? Activity. So now we say that what? The cost pool has to do with grouping similar costs together. And for every cost pool, there will be a cost driver. There will be a cost driver. So an activity is that area, that aspect we want to achieve as an objective, as an organization. So we need a cost pool and a cost driver. So I said that what under exam conditions, cost pool will be given to us, cost driver will be given to us. Yeah, sometimes it's going to be our responsibility as a student to identify the cost driver to each cost pool. Sometimes the cost driver can be given together with the what? Cost pool. So having said that, what are the okay now? So let's come back to this cost of production. So remember we said the cost of production has to do with your material, labor, expenses, then your production overhead. So what do we want to achieve using the traditional costing technique and the absorption costing technique? Is that what we want to achieve? How to calculate production what? Overhead. Calculation of production overhead. Calculation of production overhead. So calculation of production overhead is what we want to achieve. Calculation of production overhead. Of production overhead using both what? Absorption costing technique and what? Activity-based costing technique. So we want to learn how do we calculate production overhead using absorption costing technique? And how do we calculate production overhead using activity-based costing technique? So that is our area of focus. So any illustration we are going to be doing will be centered towards calculation of what? Production overhead using absorption costing technique, using activity-based costing technique. So before we move on, what are the challenges? Challenges of ABC. Now, number one, you can say it is complicating. It is complicating. Number two, when you carry out a cost-benefit analysis using activity-based costing technique, the cost might exceed the benefits. The cost might exceed the benefits. Unlike your traditional absorption costing technique, because you are not breaking down your cost, so it allows for overhead costs to be low. You're not going to be incurring a high overhead cost, but you are now looking at a costing technique that allows your overhead cost to be broken down. It means that you are going to be incurring more cost than you are expected to incur. So carrying out a cost-benefit analysis, the cost you are going to be incurring might be exceeding the benefit you are going to be enjoying from adopting that kind of costing technique system. So the cost exceeds the what? Benefits. Now, another disadvantage or challenges is that some cost pool do not have a cost driver. Some cost pool do not have a cost driver. So if we are saying some cost pool do not have a cost driver, how do we now identify a cost driver to that cost pool? So some cost pool do not have a cost driver. So if some cost pool do not have a cost driver, how do we identify a cost driver to such cost pool? That's another challenge. Unlike the traditional costing technique, where you don't need a cost pool, you don't need a cost driver. All you just need is the total overhead cost that you have incurred, irrespective of how it has been classified. Take the total, then you absorb them into your production overhead. So that one is very easy, and it makes your overhead cost to be low. It makes your overhead cost to be what? Low. Then, and another thing that makes activity-based costing technique or a modern costing technique more reliable is that if you look at it, business are expanding, business are getting more complex, unlike before, where some businesses just produce a single product. So now businesses are producing more than one product. So at the point where businesses are getting more complex in the activities to carry out, so we will need a technique, a system that will allow us to be able to align with the complexity of businesses. So that's another essence of what the activity-based costing of technique. You understand? Then what are the advantages? Advantages of ABC. Number one advantage of ABC, it helps to make better decision. It helps to make better decision. Another advantage of ABC, it makes better pricing decision. Pricing decision are better. When we get to pricing decision, we know pricing decision has to deal with how we calculate the price of goods and services. You understand? So pricing decision are better. And another one, it helps organizations to understand the value they have added to their overhead. So it helps organization to understand the value they have added to their overhead. helps organizations to understand the value they have added to their overhead. Another one, let me just add one more accurate costs, more accurate cost, more accurate cost. So these are the advantages of activity-based costing and the challenges of what activity-based what costing. So the last thing now is, if to calculate your absorption costing technique, you're going to need a level of activity, which is what labor hours. Then what will you need for you to be able to calculate your what activity-based costing technique? You'll be needing what we call an activity-based rates. Activity-based what rate? Activity-based rates. Now, it is this activity-based rates that is still going to serve as your what? Your level of activity. But under the activity-based costing, we call it what? Activity-based what? Rate. Activity-based rate. So activity-based rate is what we are going to be needing for us to be able to what? Absorb our what? Production overhead using activity-based what? Costing. So do you have any question before we look at practical illustrations? Any question?
No question from me.
Okay.
No question.
All right. Now, so let's now look at the illustration that I sent two PDF. One is for illustration, and the other is the notes that we can have that would guide us. So let's look at that illustration. Illustration in ABC. Now, those illustrations are, or they are all extracted from the ICANN pack. Extracted from the ICANN pack. So we are going to be solving all of them. They are extracted from the ICANN pack. Solving them. So let's check the illustration. So let's open the PDF. Let's check the illustration. Then share my screen. So we can see the illustration, right?
Yes.
So is it that we are checking it from our end or we are screenshotting? So for those that might want to check later or wants to watch it later, let's try to screenshot it. Let's screenshot the illustration. So this is the continuation to the first one. Let me just leave it so that it would. So for those that wants to. Then the next one. So let's just try to screenshot it. Everything are from ICANN pack. And the last diet question too is there. The last diet question on activity-based costing as well is there. I'm going to solve that as well. Might be they want to go and do that as an assignment. So are we with the illustration now so that we can solve, because I will be using it for my end here.
Yes, please.
All right.
You can proceed.
So let's go. Now, So illustration one. Illustration one. OKKDIM Nigeria Limited. That's the first question. OKKDIM Nigeria Limited. Now, said OKKDIM Nigeria Limited is considering the use of activity-based costing approach in its overhead recovery. The company manufactures two products known as alpha and beta. So products are what? Alpha products, alpha and beta. So the two products manufactured by the company, alpha and beta. Now, details of production for the two products are given below. Details of production for the two products are given below. Now, we have alpha beta. We have annual production in units. We have direct labor time per unit in hours. We have number of special parts per unit. We have number of setup per batch. We have number of sales invoice issued per year. We have number of separate materials issued per batch, and we have batch size units. Now we're told that the analysis of the overhead cost provided for the following information. So if you look at it now, these are our overhead cost analysis. We have the setup cost, special part handling cost. Now for the setup cost, the cost driver is number of setup. So we have been given, you can see this question, the cost driver was actually directly traceable to the cost. The special part handling cost, number of special parts. Customer invoicing cost, number of invoices. Material handling cost, number of batches. Then other overhead, labor hours. Now the question now is, use the traditional approach to determine the direct labor hourly rates for the company. I use the direct labor hour rate to compute overhead rate attributable to a unit of alpha and beta product. So when we are solving questions for overhead costing, first thing first we should understand, sorry, for activity-based costing, first thing first we should understand is we are comparing how much we are going to incur as a cost per unit using absorption costing technique, and how much we are going to incur as a cost per unit using activity-based costing technique. So it means that what we are going to be calculating for both absorption costing technique and what activity-based costing technique. So number one thing you should understand. So let me come here. Sorry. Let me come here. Let me come here. So let me make this part my workings. We make this part my workings. So the first one now will be traditional costing technique. That's by absorption. Costing. So traditional costing technique, that's by absorption. Now, let's go. So, what we are looking for is, remember from the explanation I gave, remember I said what we want to calculate is what? Production overhead. Our area of focus is calculation of production overhead. So we want to calculate production overhead using both activity-based costing technique and absorption costing technique. So first thing, what is production? How do you calculate production overhead? So remember that production overhead is calculated by saying overhead absorption rates times the actual level of what? Activity. Now, overhead absorption rates, OAR, means what? Overhead absorption rates. Then actual ALOA means what? Actual level of activity. Now, I want to calculate production overhead. So the first thing I need is my overhead absorption rate. Now, remember, I now need to calculate for my OAR. How do I calculate for my OAR? Budgeted overhead divided by budgeted activity, which is also known as BO over what? PA. Budgeted overhead divided by budgeted activity. Projected overhead divided by projected what? Activity. Now, so what will be my projected overhead? My projected activity. So let's go. Remember, for traditional costing technique, which is absorption costing technique, we said that what? We are not looking at individual cost. We are not looking at the breakdown of the overhead cost. We are looking at the total overhead cost as a whole, right? Please let's unmute now so that we can be responding. So I'll be sure that following. We said we are looking at the total overhead cost as a whole, right?
Yes.
Okay. So from what we have here now, what's the total overhead cost from the question? What's the total overhead cost? Remember, we were giving the analysis of the overhead cost, right?
Yes.
We have the setup cost. So setup cost, special handling part cost, customer invoicing cost, material handling cost, and other overhead. So the total of each of those what cost is the sum of all the overhead costs. So if we sum it up together, what's that going to give us?
That's that's 13,328,000.
8,000. All right. 13,328,000.
Yes.
13,328,000. Now, the next thing, comment, please.
Yes.
So the next thing now will be, after we have calculated that 13,328,000, so what we are going to do next is to calculate our what? Budgeted activity. Now, how are we going to calculate our budgeted activity? So remember that your budgeted activity will be based on your budget. And I told us that for traditional absorption costing technique, our budgeted activity will be based on what? Labor hours, right?
Yes.
Labor hours. So let's look at it. How many products do we have?
2
products. We have the first one to be what? Alpha and the next one to be what? Beta. For alpha and beta, what is the labor hours for alpha? What's the labor hours for beta? So the labor hours. So if you look at it, they said direct labor time per unit in what? Hours. Direct labor time per unit in hours. So direct labor time per unit, that is labor hours per what? Units. Abi?
Yes.
Now, labor hours per unit. So that labor hours per unit is the number of hours we are going to spend on what? One unit. Abi?
Yes.
But what we are looking for is the labor cost per what? Hour.
Wow.
The labor cost per what? Hour. So if the labor hours per unit is 20 for alpha, then
Yes.
how do I know the labor cost per unit? The labor cost per unit, that will be what? 20 multiplied by the number of units, right?
Yes.
So what's the number of units for alpha? 120,000. So I'll
Yes.
say 20, then 120,000. Now this should give us 20 120,000. It should give us 240 what? 1,000. 240,000 for me. 240,000. Now for Betam now is what? The labor time per unit for Betam is what? 25. Then the number of units is what? 120,000. So that would give us what? This multiplied by this. That will give us what?
3 million.
2 million, right? So if we sum them together, sorry. If we sum them together, that would give us 5,400,000. Are we together?
Yes.
So 5,400,000 is going to be our budgeted what? Activity. Our budgeted activity. So our budgeted overhead is what? 1,328,000 what? Let me put it here so I can write this one in full. Budgeted overhead. So our budgeted overhead is
13 million.
Sorry, 13,288,000. Let me make this one to be 20 units. Then let me make this one to be 25. No, sorry. 20 hours. Okay. Oh yeah, let's look at it. So this is supposed to be 20 hours, not units. 20 hours. And this is supposed to be what? 25 hours.
Yes.
Then this 120 is supposed to be 120,000 units. Then this is supposed to be what? 120,000 units. So let's just get that done again. So I might not be able to multiply because of the unit I put there. Okay, let me just do it like this. So let's use our calculator then. 20 times 120,000, that's 2,400,000 hours. So it's going to be expressed in hours. Remember, it's hours we are looking for.
Yes.
The budgeted activity will be in hours. Then the next one is 25 times 120,000. That's what?
3,000 hours.
No. Tony shooting soon. 3
No.
million
Friend,
hours.
3 million. Sorry.
Then if we sum both together, that will give us 5,400,000 hours. So our budgeted activity is going to be 5,400,000 hours. Now, our budgeted overhead is what? 13,328,000 naira. Now, this one will be what? Naira. All right?
Yes.
Mm.
Okay. Just trying to put the sign. So, having calculated that, we now have what we need to calculate our production overhead, right?
Yes.
So, okay, wait, before that, we have not calculated our OAR.
Yes.
So, remember what we want to calculate is OAR.
Yes.
So,
Mm.
OAR will be what? Budgeted overhead, Abi.
Yes. All
Yeah,
over.
budgeted, actual budgeted.
13 million. Let me just put in there. 13,328,000. Abi?
Yes.
Yeah,
Divide by.
divided by
So, divided by, okay, divided by what? 5 million,
5.4
4,
hours.
4 million, 5,400,000, Abi?
Yes.
5,400,000 what? Hours. So, if we do that, our OAR, let's use calculator. I can't use the sheet because of what I'm having there.
Yeah.
OAR will give us what? By our calculator,
2.46
divided by 500. That'll give us what? 2.47. Okay, let's just say 2.468. That'll be
468.
2.468
Yes.
per what? Hour.
Hour.
Per what? Hour. So that's our OAR.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's our OAR. Now, having calculated our OAR, so what will be our actual level of activity? Remember, our actual level of activity for product A is what? 2,400,000 hours. Abi? Then our actual
Yes,
level of activity for product B, which is Betam, is what? 3 million hours.
3
So
million hours.
having calculated our overhead absorption rate, then what we are now going to calculate now will be our what? Production overhead. So let's go.
Right.
Production
Overhead.
overhead. So production overhead now will be what? Remember, what's the formula for production overhead? OAR
Yeah. Multiplied
times what?
by
Actual level of
actual
what?
level of activities.
Activity. So let's go. We'll take it product by product. The first product is what? Alpha.
Alpha. Yes.
Yes,
Remember, is this here we are using for oats? Hope we know.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let me copy and paste. So this multiply by this. Okay, let me just write it. Multiply by what? Sorry, 2,400,000 hours. That's for Alpha, Abi.
Yes.
Then Betam is still going to be
Same thing.
this multiply by 3 million, right?
Yes.
Hours. So what would
Yes.
this give us? Let's use our
The first one will
calculator.
give you 5,923,55555.
So the first one is what? 5,923,555.
Yes. 555. Yes. Point five.
Point what?
0.556.
5. Let's say
56.
55. The
The
next
second
one,
one is 7 million.
7 million.
Yes, 404,000.
Uh-huh.
Thousand. That's all.
Okay, 1,000.
Yeah.
So that's that. Do we understand?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if I want to remember, this is total production overhead.
Yes.
Don't forget, this is total production overhead. Now, the question can be that we should calculate it per unit. Per unit. So if I want to calculate it per unit, how will I calculate it per unit? I'll just come here. Units of production. Now, my unit of production. So, what would be my unit of production for alpha?
Alpha. That will be
Remember, how many units of alpha? 120,000
120,000.
units. Abi?
Yes.
Then how many units for beta?
120,000.
120,000 units, right? Then costs per what? Unit. So cost per unit will now be this cost, Abi,
Yes.
divided by what? 120,000. So yeah, let's press it on our calculator. What would that give us?
5. For the first one, 49.36.
The first one,
49.36.
this one,
Yes.
49.36. The next one,
61.7 for Betham.
61.7 for beta.
Yeah.
61, has approximated it already. So that is the, so we can see that now. That's based on active what? So this is based on traditional costing technique, right?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, let's look at it for 1 minute before we move.
Balaji, sorry.
Yeah.
They said this diet we are using digital. So that means we are to solve a question like this. This is the way we are going to be solving it.
I swear that digital, I don't know yet, but let's wait for confirmation. I don't think they are ready for that.
Okay.
I don't know. It's the same thing we had. I don't know yet.
All right.
So 30 seconds more. Eniola, ask your question.
I'm still okay for now.
Okay. So you can go back after this thing and look at it again. I'll send the recording. And I'm streaming it live as well, so we can check this thing.
Okay.
Okay, so coming. Okay, so let's look at the next one, Abi, which is the activity-based costing approach, right? So now let's go back to the requirement of the question. Let's go back to the requirement of the question. Requirement AI says use the traditional approach to determine the direct labor hourly rate for the company. So what's the direct labor hourly rate for the company? The first one is what? Okay, that's your. Okay, the first one is what? 2,400,000 what?
4,000 hours.
Hour.
Then the next one is what? 3
3,000,000 hours.
Then the next requirement says use the direct labor hourly rate to compute the overhead rate attributable to the unit of AFAM and BETAM. So what's our overhead rate? Our overhead rate is what? 2.46
Yes.
per hour. Then the next requirement now says determine the cost driver rate using the ABC approach. Then compute the overhead rate per unit of each product using ABC approach. So now, here is it. According to the first requirement, the A part of the requirement, I and II, we have done it.
Yes.
But we now went further to calculate the total cost. So let me call this total costs. Total costs. So total costs. Then the unit of production and the cost per unit, depending on how the. So now let me now come to this place. So let me make this place. And this one will be long because we'll be making use of what's all the cost pools. Now, activity based costing approach. Activity based costing approach. Now, so let's start. So the same thing. Now, determine the cost driver rate. So for us to determine the cost driver rate, that's the cost driver rate. That's just like the overhead absorption rate. Abi?
Yes.
So for us to determine what that cost driver rate will be, we need to first know our overhead and our activity. So let's start. So I'll come here. Remember that production overhead is calculated as what?
Production overhead absorption rate multiplied by actual level of activities.
So we are times. So this one will be actual level of what? Activities. Then remember we need to look for what? OAR. Abi?
Yes.
So what will be OAR? That will be budgeted overhead, Abi.
Yes, all of that projected activity.
Now let's start. So we will now be taking them one by each. So the first one is what? Setup costs. Setup cost.
Yes.
So for setup cost, what's your budgeted overhead for setup cost? Budgeted overhead for setup cost is what?
10.
2 million.
It's
Two 2,000,000
2,928,000.
That's for setup cost.
Yes.
Now we now need our budgeted activity, Abi, for
Yes.
setup cost. So how do we get our budgeted activity? It means that we now have to go product by product, right? So
Yeah.
what's the cost driver for your setup cost? Number
Then,
of what? Setup. So we indicate number of setup. So if we have alpha, Abi,
yes.
and we have what? Beta. So for alpha, now let's go. Number of setup. You can see they told us. Come in, let me admit. Okay, let's continue. Now, alpha. Come in, need to admit. Please. Come in. Now, let's continue. For alpha, if you look at it, we were told that the cost driver to setup cost is what? Number of setup, right?
Yes.
Exactly. Now, for alpha, for setup cost, number of setup. So check the number of setup from the information given. So for those that are just joining up, the question we are solving, there's no way I can attach the question to this thing there. So the question we are solving, though, just let's follow. I would share the sheet and the recording later on so that we can listen to it. Then the question that we solve will be there. But let's pay attention and follow what we're saying. Now, for number of setup, let's check. If you look at it, we have number of setup per batch, right?
Yes.
Now we have number of setup per batch. Now check under. You're going to see batch size units, right?
Yes.
So it means that what our number of setup per batch is based on the batch size units. Do we get that now? Number of setup per batch. Remember, we are dealing with setup cost.
Yes.
And our setup cost is based on number of what? Setup.
Yes.
And we are told that the number of setup that we have is based on what? Per batch.
Per batch.
So it means that for every batch, how many number of setup do we have for alpha? 10. And for every batch, how many number of setup do we have for beta?
30.
Now we now have the batch size unit, Abi. So it means that for alpha, how many units do we have in a batch? 10,000.
10,000.
And for beta, how many units do we have in a batch? 50.
50,000.
So I'll now show you. No, it's 50. It's not 50,000.
50. Yes, sorry.
So I'll now come for alpha. That will be 10. Abi? 10 per what? Batch. Then how many batch? That's 10,000 units. Abi? In a batch. Do we get that now?
Yes.
Then I'll come for beta. How many per batch for beta?
30
per batch. Then I have what? 50 units. So if we multiply it, what would that give us?
Times.
So the first one, 10 times 10,000.
That's 100,000.
That's what?
100,000.
100,000 setup.
Yes.
Then the next one will be what?
1,005.
1,500 setup. So we have calculated that for setup. So now let's now look for the budgeted activity for setup. Abi?
Yes.
The budgeted activity for setup now will now be what? Sorry, it's a budgeted activity. That's the budgeted activity we just calculated.
Yes.
The absorption rate for setup will now be what? Let me say the OAR for setup is going to be what? What's the production overhead? So let's have the first one, the budgeted overhead for our farm.
66 points. OAR is equals to 66.
Okay, wait, let's sum this together.
Okay. That's
This will give us
100,000, 105.
500 setup.
Yes.
Now, so this is going to be our budgeted activity, right?
Yes.
Now, the OAR is now going to be, remember, so what's our budgeted overhead now? 2,928,000.
Yes.
2,928,000 coming. 2,928,000. Okay, sorry, I needed to admit somebody. 2,928,000 divided by what? 101,500 watts
Setup.
So what would that give us?
28.85.
That will give us what?
28.85.
28 points what?
85
per watts
setup.
So that will be OAR will be 28.85 per watts setup. 28.85 per setup. Now we have calculated the OAR for setup. So if you look at it, they said use traditional approach to determine the determine the cost driver rate using ABC approach. So the cost driver rate for setup is what? 28 point what? 28.85 setup. That's the one for setup. Now we move to number 2. Remember I said we are taking it one after the other, right?
Yes.
So for number 2, what's the number 2? Special parts handling cost. Special parts handling costs. Special parts handling costs. So let me bolden it. Now we go again in the same vein. We go again. So what's the overhead for special part handling costs? 2,400,000, right? Then the budgeted activity for special part handling costs. Now, what's the cost driver? Number of special parts, right? Are we together? Number of special parts. Number of special parts. No, number of special parts. That's the this thing for special parts. So now let's now calculate now for alpha and for what? Beta. So let's now go to our information. We have number of special parts per what? Unit. So it means that our number of special parts is in per unit, Abi.
Yes.
So that will be 10 special parts, Abi.
Yes.
Then how many for our farm? 120,000 watts units.
Yes.
Now for beta, how many special parts for beta? 40 special parts. How many units for beta? 120,000 units. So if we multiply them together, what will that give us? 10 times 120,000.
1.2.
That's 1,200,000 special what? Parts. Now the next one, 40 times 120
That's 4.8.
times 120, 4.8, Abi.
Yes.
4,800,000
800,000.
special parts. Now, if we sum it up together, what will be the total? That will be what? Six, Abi?
7.
No,
Six,
six.
six,
Two plus.
six, yes,
That
6
will be
million.
6 million special parts. So that will be our budgeted activity, right? 6
Yeah.
million special parts. Now, let's now go to our OAR for special parts handling costs. Our OAR for special parts handling costs will be, what's our 2,400,000 divided by what? 6 million special what? Parts. Now that will give us what?
0.4.
What would that give?
0.4.
0. Just 4.
Yes.
0.40 per what?
Special parts.
Special parts. So that's our OAR for special parts handling what? Costs. Now, the next one is what? Customer invoicing service. Customer invoicing service. The next one we go, number 3. Customer invoicing service. Now, so let's check what's our budgeted activity or budgeted overhead for customer invoicing service is what? 1,160,000, right? Then budgeted activity for customer invoicing service is what? Number of what? Number of invoices. Number of invoices. So for alpha and for what? Beta. Now for alpha and for beta. For alpha, number of invoices. Yeah, let's check. We said number of sales invoice issued per what?
Yeah.
Year. Exactly. So this one, number of sales invoice issued per year, that's for 500 for alpha and what? 24 for beta. So if you look at this one, you see that we didn't multiply it by anything, right?
Yes.
We didn't multiply it by anything. Why didn't we multiply it by anything? Simply because we were told it is issued per year for the year. We were not told it is issued per unit or per batch. For setup cost, we are told that setup cost is per batch. That's why we multiply by what? The number of units in batch. For special part handling cost, we are told it's per unit. That's why we multiply by the number of what? Units. So our budgeted activity here will be what? 2,900,000 what?
Invoices.
So our OAR, overhead absorption rates, is going to be what? 1 million, right?
160,000.
160,000 divided by what? 2,900,000 what? Invoices. So what would that give us? We give us what?
400 invoices.
400, right?
Yes.
400 naira per what? invoice. So that's going to be our OER for what?
Customer invoice services.
Customer invoice service. So remember that by the time we are multiplying to get each of them, we'll now be multiplying the OER times each of those level of what activity. Then the third one, number 4. Number 4 is what? Material handling cost. Material handling costs. Now, for material handling costs, let's go again. The same approach. Budgeted overhead and what? Budgeted activity. So what's the budgeted overhead for material handling cost? 2,520,000, right?
Yes.
2,520,000. Then number of batches, right?
Yes.
Number of batches. So for alpha and for what? Beta. So number of batches for alpha is what? Number of batches, that's 10,000.
10,000.
10,000. Then for beta is what? 50.
Yes.
That's then if we add up, that'll give us 10,000 and what? 50 units. That will be our budget for the what? Activity, right?
Yes.
We have budgeted activity. So our OER for material handling cost now will be what? Our OER for material handling cost is going to be
2,520,000.
okay. So that will be 2,520,000 divided by what? 10,000
50
and 50 units. That will give us what? So OER will give us what? So what would that give us?
250,000 and 250.76 per unit.
200.76 per what?
Unit.
So that's the OER based on what? Material handling cost. Then the last one, which is what? The last one is what? Other overheads. So the other overheads, So let's go again. The same approach. Budgeted activity, budgeted overhead having. So other overhead, budgeted overhead is what? 4,320,000. Then this one is what? Labor hours. So remember, then beta abi.
Yes.
So if you remember that when we calculated based on absorption costing, we had our labor hours here. Abi, let me see if I can copy here. Okay, I was able to copy it. I just copied the labor hours here instead of just so instead of typing it again. So this 25 now, have you? So then and get here. So our budgeted activity will be what in total?
5,000.
5 million to 5,400,000.
Yes.
Now, hey, laptop is low. Now, so OAR will now be what? 4,320. I mean,
Yes.
4,320,000 divided by what? 5,000,000.
Million.
400,000 hours.
Yes.
So OAR will be what?
0.8.
As 0.80 hours. Hour. So that's the calculation. Now there is a C part. There is a C part. So that C part is just telling us that we are going to calculate profit, but let's still leave that for now.
Okay.
So now this is what we are now going to do. So look at what I did here. Look at what I did here. Let's come back to the traditional costing technique.
Yes.
Now let me do like something under here. I'll now call it analysis of production
Right.
costs what units
Okay.
based on ABC. So now I will come here, products. Okay, no, I'll come here, overhead costs. Overhead costs. Then the first one is what? Setup cost,
Yes.
setup cost. So for my setup cost, what's my setup cost now? So for our farm now, our farm will be what? What did I get for this thing? This now multiplied by, remember we said it is overhead absorption rate multiplied by actual level of activity,
Activity. Yes.
The actual level of activity for our farm is this,
Yes.
Yeah, so let's multiply it together. Please, let's be fast. My laptop is slow. So what would that give us in total?
$2,885,000.
That will be 2,885,000. So this will be total cost,
Yes.
Naira, and this will be units of what? Production, and this will be costs per what? Unit. So remember this thing here will be what? Let me do it like this. OAR times what? Actual level of what? Activity. So for setup cost now, so if you look at what we are doing now for setup cost, then what's the unit of production for our farm? Now what's the unit here? Unit of production for our farm is what? 120,000 units, right?
Yes.
Then what will be the cost per unit? Then the next one, Betam. So let's go for Betam. Hey, laptop is low. Then, hey, sorry. Still this.
Okay.
Then this for Betam. So let's calculate what will be the
Cost per unit.
the total cost first. Total cost.
Okay.
That's 28.85 multiply.
By 1.5. That's 43,275.
43,275.
275.
Then the unit is what? 120,000 watts units.
Yes.
So that's how we go. We'll now come for the next one, which is what? Special handling costs. We'll take it like that again. So we'll go for the special handling cost. We go like that again. Our farm and what? Betam.
Okay.
So for the special handling cost now, this is going to be our OAR, right?
Yes.
Put it. Then the same thing here. Then let me notes. Then for special handling cost, the actual level of activity for the special handling cost is what? 1.2.
Yes.
Abi?
Yes.
Then for Betam is what? 4.8. Abi? Then we multiply and get the answer.
Yes. Hello, Balaji.
Hello?
Hello,
The
Balaji.
place is about the door on that, we?
In the call.
You know, he's been complaining about battery now.
Can we hear? Can we hear?
Yes, yes, we are with you.
Okay.
Balaji.
So my laptop battery is
Can you hear me?
down already.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
my laptop battery is down already. So what's going to happen now is that once light comes, that place where we stopped, I've
Yeah.
already saved it. Then I will send the sheets to the group. So
Okay.
we'll go and complete that analysis I was doing.
Yeah.
We will complete it. We'll complete that aspect. Then the sheet has like three this thing. So the next aspect of the sheet, I would tell us the one we are going to do as an assignment. So we'll do that. So when we meet again, when we are going to be doing PM, we are going to now show how to treat that last aspect, because that last aspect requires us to calculate profits. It
Okay.
requires us to calculate profit. And you know, when we are calculating profit, we need our selling price and we need our cost.
Yes.
So what we have done there is computation of cost. All we have done is computation of cost. So the information gave us, or the question gave us information for our selling price. So those are the things we are going to need to help us calculate profit. But when we are going to have another PM class, I'm going to show us how we are going to do that. So then from there, we'll now touch something else. But once there's light and my laptop comes on, I would indicate that aspect so that we can finish it up and send the solution so I can vet. And so then from there, those remaining questions I put in the PDF, we can attempt them on our own, then because they are all past questions, so we can attempt them on our own. When you attempt, you can send your solutions so that I can see and let us know the aspect we need to make one corrections or not. So I hope everything we did was clear.
Yes, yes, yes. Up to the points. Yes.
Though,
Any other?
though, though though I lost out of the class, yeah,
Okay, you lost.
for a very
You
long
lost.
time. Yes, I lost signal. So before I
You lost
could get
signal.
back, yeah, before I could come
Oh,
back, it was already very, I even lost the signal before you start
the class.
solving the question. Then when I come
Oh,
back, yes, it was already in the customer invoicing.
okay. I'm going to
In,
send the recording. I just hope the recording saved because I think it's still showing on my phone here. So I will send
okay,
the recording. So when I send the
okay,
recording, we can be able to
follow up.
able to
I'll follow up and make corrections as in
that
make sure.
that person. Mayowa, I know you came late, but that aspect where you entered, were you following what we were doing? Mayor, don't sleep. Okay, now no problem. Once the light is back and laptop is on, I'll share the recording and the sheet so that we can finish it up.
Okay, sir.
All right, now no problem. So thank you for your time and
Agami,
Sure.
thank you
All
for
right.
Thank you, Balaji. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
the class. Thank you for helping.